What are some different customer traits to just be aware of as you go into a meeting with potential customers? And how do you deal with different traits of the people that you're targeting?
Yeah, so the ability to read a customer is important. So as a salesperson, and whether it's visiting face-to-face, of course that makes it a little easier, or dealing with them on the phone, because oftentimes initial contact might be a qualifying call or a prospecting call of some type. So some of the things that you can tell. First is, what's their title? So from a title perspective, you can sometimes understand what are some of their traits. So if I'm dealing with a CFO or somebody in the finance department, well, what are they going to be interested in? They're probably going to want to talk dollars, money, savings, cost of something, whatever the case might be. If I'm dealing with the COO, the operating officer, they're probably more interested in productivity, how things can work, if I'm efficiencies, things along those lines. If I'm dealing with marketing folks, they're probably going to be more likely to be wanting to hear about the image and the value or the perception of using one product over another, or the impact on their customer, the perception of their customer of adding value. So things like that. So sometimes just the title of the person that I'm calling, it gives me an entree into the types of questions that I might want to ask. I might have all three in the room. So as a result, when you're presenting, you kind of have to spin your benefits a little bit to kind of appeal to each of their needs as well. The other piece too is just some basic dynamics. So is it formal? Are they wearing a suit and a tie? You'll tend to be more formal. You could model. So are they sitting forward? Are they sitting back? Is everything on their desks at a right angle and everything kind of neat and clean? Maybe a little bit more analytical. And as a result, you're probably going to want to walk in with an appointment. You're probably going to want to lay out an agenda. You're probably want to keep kind of relatively tight time frames as to covering off on your agenda. At the same time, if you walk in and things are kind of all over and they're in shorts and flip-flops and a Bahamas shirt and something a little bit more less structured, I'll probably end up peeking in, probably leave the tie in the car. Okay, so you're going to want to help put them at ease, because otherwise it's just that mismatch that occurs. So some subtle things that you could see, visual cues, some of the data cues that might exist, and some homework cues that might exist as well. When we talk about on the phone, you think about tone. So from a tone perspective, I mentioned I worked with cable and wireless early on in my career, and I was working on the phones. I just moved to Washington, D.C. area. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll start on the phones. Well, what was great about the phones is instead of having a geo-territory that was, say, Northern Virginia or D.C. or Maryland, I had a national territory. And by having that national territory, I talked about the phone books up on the wall, is you were able to call Atlanta, or I was able to call New York, or I was able to call Philadelphia. So I knew if I wanted a quick yes or a no, I'd call New York, because you got a quick yes or a no. I knew if I wanted to talk or maybe ease into a Monday morning, I'd call Atlanta, because they were nice and they would talk to you. Even if they said no, they'd still talk to you for 5 minutes.
Southerners, right?
Yeah. So it was that kind of a mindset. So sometimes you could just tell by the tone of their voice. If they tend to talk fast, you'll pick up your speed. If they tend to talk a little slower, you'll tend to back your speed down. So part of it is kind of mirroring and that comfort level. But it has to be genuine. It has to be sincere. And by all means, has to be professional.